Meeting to order, please. Thank you, and welcome all, and thank you for coming. I want to welcome you to this special meeting of the Middlebury Select Board. We have arranged this meeting here in East Middlebury specifically to encourage people of the local community to have the opportunity to come out and talk with us and talk with each other about the situation of the Middlebury River post Hurricane Irene and the work that's been done with the river, and to let us and others know your feelings on that. And while the meeting is open to all, we certainly hope that people will respect the intent of the meeting to let the residents of East Middlebury be heard. And because we want to focus on the residents of East Middlebury, we're doing something special. We're asking our new member, Susan Shashak, to facilitate and moderate this meeting. And while she's new to the board and new to us as a member of our board, she's certainly not new to the East Middlebury community. And so we're very pleased to have her as a member of our board now, and pleased that she's been willing to step forward and jump into the fray on this important issue. So Susan, I turn over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the interest of saving time of having the microphone being passed around, what we've decided to do is to set up the microphone over here and ask people to come up there to speak. You can line up, you can wait, but we're going to have the map of East Middlebury up here, and we thought it would be helpful to have everything in one area, so you can point to where you live, you can talk about the river, and that way we're not all trying to figure out where you are on the map. It'll be something that all of us can see. And also we're taping this meeting for the record, so it's a really nice way. What I'd like to ask you to do, since all the equipment and cords are up here, if you want to come up to the microphone, just use the back and come around that back aisle. We also, the first thing, if you could please state your name for the record. I know who most of you are, but people watching might not necessarily, and the board might not necessarily know who you are. And because the main focus is for residents to have their say, I would like for the first hour for just to be residents to come up and speak. I know there's probably other people here, and I certainly want to know and hear what you have to say. But after about an hour, we can reevaluate that and get everybody else into the mix. But I really want the residents to have that first hour to have their say. And that includes the board. There might be questions going back and forth, but to really keep that going for the residents. People were asking me about timing earlier. It's a little tricky. Usually if you're concise, which I think all of us don't want to be here for the next 5 hours, if we're concise, 2 or 3 minutes is plenty of time to make your points. If you're going to get close to 5 minutes, you're going to see me going like this to wind it up and let somebody else have their turn. I'm trying to think what else. For myself, in meetings like this, I look at this as an opportunity for us to communicate with each other, because I firmly believe that everyone has the right to feel the way they do. And as long as we keep that in mind, we should be in for a good meeting. Fred has some maps that he's passing around if anybody wants them. It's this map, which we're also going to use. So I think we can just get started. It's sort of that who's brave enough to come up first and tell us your story. And feel free, if people want to come up and sit in the pews over here and wait to be the next one to speak, you're welcome to do that. It would be nice to keep it moving along. Oh, I'm sorry, and I'll try and get closer to your mic. Your mic is right there, behind you. There you go, that way you're not covering the map. State your name for the record.
All right, my name is Mike Hayes. I live not very far from here. On the map. Okay, I'm right here. Okay, I'm just across the road over here next to Wakefield and Mara Meacham, Catherine. that shows it pretty friendly right now. The river used to border Brush Hill, which everybody here knows where Brush Hill is. Now, Brush Hill used to be probably 100, 120 yards away from me. Now I can throw a stone and hit the river. It comes down and it kind of points at me. That shows a nice little mild curve toward my place. Right now it's coming right at my border. Yep, right in there. And the next one might not be so good. It's going to jump the dike, with the dike they put in 15, 16 years ago, 17 years ago, whatever. But when it jumps that, it's going to be not so good. Cut it short. Anybody that wants to come see it, I'm over here on 74 Aussie Road, walk right out back. You're going to see something that the dog path goes out. A lot of people use the dog path out there, and it drops off about 15 feet going into the water.
So
Now,
your main concern is that it's.
it's just that the next one is probably going to be not so good. So that's just my concern.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor. Good.
My name is Maren Meekum. Oh, sorry. I'm Maren Meekum, and I am Mike Hayes' neighbor. So I live at 70 Aussie Road, so one more down from where Mike was. That's the one. And what he was describing was, in fact, that where we used to have a fairly gentle curve behind Goodrose and a fairly good amount of stone, keeping the river from running through the woods and bumping up against the dike, what we have now is a very sharp turn and a complete drop-off of bank, and almost no gradual, nice deposits there, keeping things intact. And it really has changed quite a bit, and it's changed quite a bit, not just from Irene, but over the last year, I would say. That curve is really sharpening and worrisome to those of us who live just on the other side of that dike. So I just echo Mike's concern that there's an interesting pattern happening there, and I don't know what the work that was done between the bridges will, what kind of effect that will have, and I'm interested to know what the plan is for watching that.
What's the drop-off compared to what it was before?
It's
where it was
about
now?
10 feet of drop-off, like it's a bank
It
of
was about
drop-off.
3 feet before.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
there-
lost probably 25 feet when the water got high.
Yeah. Okay. Was that enough of?
That's good.
Does he get reported? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary.
Well, we're all in the same area, but being a teacher, you gotta have a visual aid. I don't need a map.
State your name, Dayton. State your name for the record, Dayton.
Oh, I'm Dave Wakefield. And I'm in the same area, and the river's gonna come through that dike as the next problem.
Hey, Dayton.
I'm right there.
Dayton, they can't see you because you're standing in their way.
Okay.
Turn the other way. Go on the other side, because you're blocking them. They can't
Who
see.
am I blocking?
These guys.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So these are my students. So
Oh, okay.
Go right ahead.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. What we're talking about is that river has come around and wants to make a straight shot this way, right through the burn. It's already started to eat it. And as Mike and Maren said, it's a real dramatic change out there right in this area. But what my concern is, which has very little to do with the future and more with the immediate situation, I will have a little visual aid for you. And I'll put my glove on first. This is all from out back,
Oh, yeah.
and it's close to the river. In fact, these are on the shore, ready for the next shower. Knee high. Where's the radar? Russell Wright pottery. You remember that in the 50s? That'd be valuable if it was old. Anyway, I'm not going to drag out anymore. I picked this up in 5 minutes. Oh, here's something, curiosity. A hood milk bottle right behind Bud Thomas. Anyway.
Cool.
Hurricane Irene has opened up a dump that is on the bank of the river. Basically, right where Mike and Maren have mentioned. And I don't know how long it is, how deep it is, but this stuff has poured out of the dump and is on the shore. My concern is that if we don't act quickly, more of this stuff gets washed into the river where fishermen and swimmers like to take advantage of it. So, one, if you think we ought to close up the dump quickly, I can show you where it is. It's easy to find. And second of all, I wish that we don't take a lot of time deciding what to do, because a little bit of rain will bring the river up and bring more of this stuff into the river. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Who would like to go next? It's okay.
Yeah, it's, live on Aussie Road, right here. And the dike runs along here.
What's your name?
Hobbs Albert. The dike runs along here, and with the storm that washed up the previous bridge, and since Irene, if you get down below into here, and that there's actually a path that runs, and 20 years ago, I used to mow it with my lawnmower to take the kids down there. And the dike used to run like kind of back into here, and since Irene hit, it's kind of like stopped. So you can walk that trail all the way behind the storage facility and walk to the shore and walk right to the river. But all the banks that were there aren't there anymore. And on there's a big, I don't know the proper word to use, but I would just call a junkyard of lumber that's just piling up. And it's, it's just, we got Route 7, our big, huge bridge here, and it's like, we don't need to lose our Route 7 bridge. It's just, I don't know what we need to do, but we need to build up some supports or something, because it's just, if we ever have something like this again, and like I said, I live right there, and I don't want to lose my house. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just the green indicate.
Hi, my name's Rick McGuire. I don't have the right glasses. I live behind Craig. On Newton Lane. I guess my concern would be when the dike was constructed, whenever, they must have based the height of that dike on, be it the elevation of the river bottom or whatever. I would assume it's the river bottom or the height of the water running through the river. And I would think over the years, as the bottom has come off with change cost, I think so is the water, so the level of the water during the floods and whatnot. So I think if the base of the river was put back to its original elevation that it was at the time the dike was constructed, we'd be, getting the full benefit of the dike, I think. But if the bottom of the river has come up so is the water level. Hence, if it's come up 2 feet, we're losing 2 feet of protection that the dike was originally intended to give us. So I guess I would like to see the base of the river put back to at whatever elevation it was at the time the dike was constructed. Thank you.
Thank you.
You all know me.
Stated for the record.
I'm Erica Murray, and our business or shop is at 52 Aussie Road. Actually, it's 50. My mom says 52. I just want to point out that we're coming into colder weather, and it's not just another potential flood that we're facing. But if you go out behind our business, just down behind Greg's and Rainey's, there is huge amounts of debris, logs that have, and boulders. I mean, it has changed so much back there. My main concern is now that we're going to be going into winter, and then we're going to be going into spring, when we have ice jams like the one we had last year, where the bridge on Route 7, I don't know if there's any, I don't know the name of the bridge, but that flooded because there was a jam there. Now, it only stands to reason in my mind that if we don't clean some of that out prior to spring, we're going to be jamming further. I mean, all you got to do is walk back. I mean, I know a lot of you have, but there's just rocks and trees and boulders, and I'm really worried about the spring thaw and the ice jamming. Like I said, it's not just more potential flooding, but I think we also need to take a look at that and when we make a decision on the next appropriate steps to clean, if we're going to clean or however this may work. And my other question was, I'm not sure how this is going to be funded, and maybe that's still we're taking a look at that, or
We don't know.
we don't
We
know.
don't know.
Okay.
We don't know a whole lot. We're just getting the information at this point, and then it will move forward from there.
Right. Because while I do remember in prior meetings, there was some discussion on whether some of the financial burden be on the landowners, and I know that the permitting processes and all of that are kind of tense right now, so, and I know that nothing's going to be done until those are worked out, and I understand that, but please hear us when I say that I think in the spring we could really be looking at some more potential.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
thank you.
I'm Lynn Lilyhammer, and I live up in toward the further reaches of the high velocity part of the river. There's so much I could say, but I'll try to keep it brief. I have a lot of observations and a lot of other information. I used to sit on the watershed, I don't think we'd call it committee, but group of people. I don't know what happened to that, but I chose to leave because one of the things that came out of this was it started to become a political forum. Who wanted clean water, who didn't, and also it came to light that there were a lot of people that were at these meetings, including Fish and Game, and it came to light that they didn't care what direction the river was going to take. The feeling was that let the river do what it wanted to do. And the question came up, because I'm a landowner, well, what if it rips toward my backyard? And the response was, so be it. That is what the goal seems to be for Fish and Game in the state of Vermont environmental people. And I totally disagree with that, because we've lived there going on, hard to believe, 18 years, maybe longer than that. We owned it for 2 years. We became stewards of the property. We cleaned it up, helped fortify the bank with plantings, deep root plantings. And what I have observed, though, is that a lot of things have been going on up in the watershed that are highly questionable. Huge houses, huge tracts of land being cleared. I can think of two right off the road, right across from the stream, that are just muddy fields with rivulets. Where does that water go? It goes into the ditch, into the river. Everybody up there seems to have a pond. There's a lot of roofs with metal sheeting. Water just even my neighbor, the water just flies right off that roof. Where does it go? Into the river. The college and the state have decided to let trees fall across the river and leave them. We can think of one instance where that happened, and my partner and I knew that was going to be bad news for us come spring, and sure enough, it's just a simple pine tree, but it backed up a whole river and changed the course of the river, which impacted downstream, tore a bank apart on a corner, and all of that went downstream. And then you add to that the road work that's been done not once but twice, maybe 3 times, and people with long driveways that get washed out. I think we need to look upriver, and I applaud what the town has done so far down in the village. I wish they'd come up further our way, because we have lost property. In '98, we survived that. All the work that I did paid off. In 2008, it started undermining some of the work, and that was another devastating runoff and rain. But this year, this was incredible. It was a violent amount of water. It was stinky too, unbelievably stinky. I wonder if there was septic in that from upstream. But anyway, this the property couldn't handle. We're going to lose a tree. We've lost a huge boulder. We've lost 4 feet of bank, and everything on our property went downstream. Our neighbor's property impacted us because they had, I'm sorry, this is important, that had been built up with riprap. But you know, it hits that and then it diverts and took out our property. Our neighbors is next, and as far as I know, it went downstream and devastated. So, you know, fish, there will always be fish, but there will not always be people. Why are we looking to go to Mars? So anyway, I have so much more I could say. If you want to know, come see me.
Could you help me understand where your property is?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it's kind of.
You can point to this as a laser pointer.
Okay.
Okay,
bear with me. Yeah, there's the bridge.
Sand Hill.
And it looks like our property's been divided twice, but if this is our neighbors, we're right here. And we do have some shoreline, and I planted trees there to shade the river.
So you're right at the base of the hill, is what you're saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right.
And I've done a lot of really neat work there, but anyway, come talk to
Okay.
me if you want to know.
Okay, I just wanted to understand.
Thank you, sir.
Wait, Lynn, can you come back for a second? There's a question for you.
Could you explain the state storm sewer?
Oh, gosh, yeah, I know, there's so much.
It's okay.
I have to also express that ever since I met with the state when they came in to talk about redoing Sand Hill Bridge, and we had big concerns about that. But the state has a culvert that runs through our property and emerges at the stream. I had an engineer who's very good, Neil from Champlain Construction. And he looked at it, but we've been aware of this. It doesn't go out far enough. The state put in stonework, like a wall, and that keeps getting undermined. And I constantly have dug out the drain. I'm always maintaining it. I feel somewhat responsible because we live there. In the winter, I've opened it up because I saw water all the way down to Birnbaum's, and it was flooding and beginning to ice. So I cleaned that out. State came along, town came along, nobody did anything, so I did it. And I stopped the water from going down and settling in the road. So, but the big problem we have is, around that pipe, this storm has damaged the rock work. And the pipe had so much water gushing out that it destroyed everything under it and below it. It just undermined and wiped it out. So we have been complaining to the state. We've asked them to take it out because they're not maintaining it in good faith. And it's a detriment to the habitat and to people living downstream. I wish they would move it upstream, you know, where, what is that pit, the old mill?
The
somewhere.
ironworks.
Right, somewhere up there. They don't maintain it. I've been maintaining it since we lived there. So, anyway,
Thank you, Linda.
thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jim Francis. Lynn and I live in that house that she pointed out. I just wanted to add a couple things. She covered most of the topics, but one thing we were very fortunate in this flood, and a lot of people in this community got flooded out, and it was a very scary time. The water came pretty much up to the top of our bank, and I've never seen it like that before. When you live that close to the bridge, when it comes through the bridge, it comes through there just storming through, and we got out of there, evacuated, and just I feel for the other neighbors in the community. And when I saw the town down shortly after this happened, trying to do something to protect people's property, I really appreciated it. And then when I heard the brouhaha about why the town was in there and they weren't doing it properly or whatever, I'm not even exactly sure what everything was, but I couldn't believe that the town was getting in trouble over that. I've been down through over the hill and what they've done through other places and other streams, just piling the rocks up everywhere. And for what the town did here, I couldn't believe there was such a big brouhaha over it. But two things I wanted to mention. One is that I'm a little concerned about right underneath the Sand Hill Bridge. One day I was, this is several years ago, I saw some guys down at the bridge and they were scuba divers, and they went down into the bridge, and I went down to ask them what they were up to, and they said, well, we're just down here looking at underneath the bridge. And they said, well, we can't believe that, years ago we used to come down here, it was like 20 feet deep, and we come down here now and it's like 3 feet deep. It's all full of silt. And the other thing I have a concern about is, and Lynn mentioned it, is that upstream, if you go up towards Ripton where that red trail there is just before you get there, there's huge big trees laying out in the middle of the river. And my concern is that we're going to get, ice dams coming down, and all those big trees that are left in the river up there are going to come floating down. There's no depth of water underneath that bridge anymore, and it's just a perfect spot to back it all up. And if it ever does get around that bridge and come down 116, everybody's going to get it. So that's my biggest concern, and I don't know exactly what the solution to that problem is, but that's just what I wanted to express. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Charlie Hone, and as you all know, I'm rather new to the community, especially compared to some of you, but I'm hoping I can add a few of my thoughts because I've spent a lot of time studying rivers, if not directly as a hydrologist, peripherally, because I've worked along a lot of rivers in different places. And before I came here, I worked on a graduate project involving watershed work in Pittsburgh. And I'm hearing a lot of concerns about sediment building up. And I'll get to that in a minute, but one thing I wanted to mention before I talk about this, I'm sure you're all aware of the Gristmill Bridge and the wall right there. And when I personally looked at that bridge after Irene, what I saw wasn't a sediment buildup. What I saw in that one spot was actually undercutting, serious undercutting under that dam or wall. And I'm sure most of you already know that, but if this thing breaks, it's going to come down 125, down 160. It's just going to be far. We're really lucky that didn't happen. And one of my concerns with the work that was done, I was appreciating that people were coming in and trying to help the community as soon as they could, but I noticed a straightening of this. So it's kind of shaky right now for some reason, but I noticed a straightening upstream from that flood wall, and it was pointing the water directly at the flood wall. And my concern was that the river was straightened, which would speed it up before the flood wall was repaired. And I live in, forgot to mention this, I live in 404 Main Street, right below that flood wall, and if that were to break, our houses and lives would be in danger. And I just wanted to say that, there's valid concern about sediment, but if we do too much sediment removal, we can cause big problems too. So I just want to put that out there. A couple other quick things. This bend right here, I don't know if anyone's been over here, right behind Middlebury lumber. That's about to cut off. My guess would be by spring thaw, it's gotten so, they call them oxbow bends, that they naturally just get steeper and steeper until the water cuts through. And that's about to cut through, and with the work that's happened down here behind Jack Brown's mill, where I live, that may have sped up the river some. Once this breaks through, it's going to drop the level of the river even more. So I'm just worried about accelerating water, and we have to remember to keep that in mind when we're also thinking about trying to protect the houses upstream. And one last thing, it's been mentioned by a couple people that the sediment isn't just there naturally. There's a lot of issues in the upper watershed, and we can talk about what to do about the sediment, but it's going to be millions, if not billions of dollars every time there's a flood if it just keeps coming down. So we really need to, and I know people have started with this, but we need to get upstream and start working with the people in Ripton, and this is where I worked on a similar project in Pittsburgh working on upper watershed issues. Almost all the water in the river doesn't fall in the river. It falls on the mountains, on the hills, on houses, on bulldozed areas. So, I'm hoping that I can add some input because I've worked on this sort of thing before, and I know others in this room have too, but just keeping in mind that the long-term solution is going to involve the top of the watershed too. So, just wanted to throw that out there. Thanks.
Thanks, Charlie.
Hi, I'm Greg Roy. I live in Cone Grove for almost 25 years. And there's so much debris in the river now that the trees and the garbage and everything else, when it starts to come down from up above, the dike is just going to be gone because it's about 25 feet gone already since I lived there. And I remember when I first went, the first year I was there, we had garbage cans, ladders, before the engineers came in and did a great job. And I just feel another 2 years like what we had, I'll have to move. I don't have a house. I don't want to see other people's land. Their house is on my land. It's a nice area. And it's not broke yet, but it's going to be if we don't do something pretty soon. That's all I can think of right now. Frank lives there. He's got to be nervous, right?
Oh yeah, I evacuated.
Yeah, so you got to fight for it. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody? Roll the dice.
I've walked dogs over by the rivers for years and years. Oh, I'm sorry, Peggy Peabody. And I'm concerned about the sediment fill that I see. We talk about what's coming down. It seems to have all landed down on the lower end of OC Road as far as filling it up. The river has been rechanneled. What was a nice big S-curve is no longer. It's a deep straight channel that's paralleling the berm. Now there's a channel right at the base of the berm in that area that's washing out the berm. And across from the new river channel is a high pile of rocks and stuff. I know you're not supposed to, it's not recommended that you dig down in the river and mine out of the river. But it seems to me if we don't get rid of some of that that's in there, we're just going to keep getting more and more of it, and the river can't possibly do its meandering that it wants to do because in the normal course of things, it's too high, it's too channeled. And on top of that now, they're talking about trees up in Ripton. Right in this area, I walk between, usually between Newton Lane and Cone Road. And right in this center area, there's this great big tree that's just sitting there. It's, I took before and after pictures, before the flood and after the flood. You wouldn't know that it was the same place. It's just absolutely amazing what happened. And what it's doing is, as far as my concern and my looking at it is putting us more in danger. If something happens to that berm, OC Road is going to be flooded.
Peggy, can you explain where you live?
I live on the other side of OC Road. Right there. Right there. And if this explains my position at all, we've had flood insurance since before the berm went in. So even with the berm in, I have never been completely satisfied or reassured that we would not get flooded where we live. And this year, because of the flooding way up where it came over, we had a river through our backyard. We've never had anything like that, and it really was just water flowing unbelievably through the backyard. We have to do something. I've been so appreciative of what the town did, of being right there, getting us almost first in line to get that work done, getting as much done as you could. I just don't want you to stop. And I think I speak probably for everybody here when we say, please, it's going to be hard, but please stick with East Middlebury and try and protect us and our property. Thank you.
I'm Anita Welch. My husband and I live, where's the little thing? We live, let's see if I can see, we live here. We live right here, and when the flood came over, you see this is the main part of the river. Well, there's this little part that comes over here, and that's the part that flooded over and came through the rest of the town. So, needless to say, it did surround our house and our lawn and garden and all that good stuff. And we were very thankful to see the town come and do what they did, and to take out, there was a humongous log jam up in that area that really was diverting the water toward us, and that was removed. We were very, very grateful for that, and we wouldn't mind if they wanted to do more. You would have our permission to do something to raise it along our back lawn if you want. We would not mind that. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I did want to say that 3 years ago, when the flood came over also, and the same thing, not to the extent it did this time, but we did go to the state. We had an engineer come down. He looked at it. He said, basically, well, it's just kind of where the river's going to go, and we really don't want to do anything. So they didn't. And we were kind of hoping that, they said, well, okay. We've been here 34 years and it's only done it this once. Maybe it won't do it again. And here we are 3 years later and it was even worse. So I do think something needed to be done. I'm glad it was done, and I hope maybe you will be able to do more to help the people further down the river. Thank you.
Thanks, Renita.
Hi, I'm Jack Brown. I live across the river from Renita, and if it hadn't jumped the river, hadn't jumped the bank at Renita's, it would have jumped on my side because it was coming over and down. Mostly because of the gravel and the rock that had been washed down. Somebody said the gorge was full a few years ago. It moved down from the gorge, it moved to a spot between the two bridges, raised the level of the river bed so much that there's no place for the water to go but out each side. But I'm more concerned, and I'm very appreciative of what the town has done to clear that out and to deepen the river bed. That seems fairly safe right now. But I'm more concerned about my business, which is, see if I can find it again here. Right here. The flood wall was repaired. Much of the flood wall has been taken out. Some of that wall is pre-1927. It was a stoned-up wall. Several parts of it have been replaced through the years. But what I'm worried about is the inlet to what we used to have as a mill pond was barricaded with a lot of stoned up, a built-up stone wall. And the town worked diligently and repaired the wall down to just about my property where the inlet used to be, that we had barricaded, and it had this last flood washed away most of that barricade. Now, we have probably 2 feet of stone up, a little bit of gravel there. Another flood like Irene will take that out. It'll run down through Brown Novelty Company, Dennis Newton's, Goodwill Lumber. It'll before it aims back into the river again. It's a low spot there. It's a channel. It was a channel meant to bring water into the pond. And that's exactly where the water is going to go, except there's no longer a pond there. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else? We still have some more time in our hour before residents. Yeah, come on. Don't be shy.
Careful.
John?
Don't cut yourself.
On the other half of it, Sarah Wakefield, I just wondered how many of you have gone down and walked along the river. I don't think you can fully appreciate how bad it is until you actually do that, because even if you didn't see it beforehand, it's so terrible now. You really should see it for yourselves.
I'd also like to note that the river came and jumped and went through Toby and Renita's house onto Route 125 and then started coming down. It certainly spread out onto everybody's houses along 125, but it came all the way down here and completely surrounded this building and kept going on down. So if this was that night, this building would have been completely surrounded as well. And we are far from the river, logistically speaking. There are several houses in between us and where the river is.
Hi, I'm Mary Kay Dumpy-Wolf, and we live at 2 Gristmill Road, right about there. We're very appreciative of what the town has done. We're on the high side. We're right across the street from Jack's Gristmill. And I know that it's just, if it hadn't diverted up by the Welch's, it probably would have come straight through the gristmill and straight through our property. And I've heard and read in the newspaper that they're concerned about the fish, that we've ruined their habitat, and I think that Irene might have done that before we did. I was talking to Lauren Miller, and she said they had I forget the number of dead fish that were on their bank after the river went through. So the fish will come back. The people won't. If anything happens where people's lives are lost, they're lost, and they won't come back. I like fish. I like watching the fish. I think it's a wonderful river, but I think our human life is much more important. Thanks.
Any other residents like to come up and speak?
Hi, I'm Bob Wells, and my wife and I live right about here. That would be Jim and Julie Kuhn's house for the last 11 years. When the storm came, it came down this street, which hopefully Bill Benton won't consider it lakefront property or anything. But at any rate, Mr. Wakefield was talking about the dump out back, and I've walked the river and I've seen it out into this area too, so I'm not sure how far you picked up your trash, but there is quite a bit right in this area. And it is getting cut right in half here, so it looks like the sediment, if it keeps going, is going to continue down. One of the things that I'm wondering about and the concern is there is a lot of trees. I've gone the whole way, up and down. A lot of trees still in it. Looks like it's going to be a potential hazard. So how many select board members have gone into the river and up and down the whole way?
I haven't been the whole way.
The whole way?
Part.
Okay, I think that's very important if you haven't, to go up and down the whole distance. The work the town did, I was happy that they did it. I wish they would continue. My property, or my wife's property, joint property as it is, I feel pretty safe for myself. Goodrow has a nice dike right here, so I was standing up pretty good, but Howard's pool got filled up, and Mr. Gale's basement did too. But myself, I think we're going to be okay, but I have a lot of concern for some people in this area. If it does come across, I think we're still high enough, but there's a lot of concern for a lot of these residents, and I think we should do some work on it. And one other comment is the Addison Independent kept reporting about all the East Middlebury residents that were completely against all the work that was being done. And by my calculation, the first night that it was brought up at the select board, I didn't see that many residents from East Middlebury complaining. So I'm going to not buy the Addison for a week. And John, one thing I'd like to mention to you is that you sort of mentioned how come the state's hammering on us. We get this little bit of river and they're hammering on us. And I'm going to say the reason why they're hammering on us is because we didn't lose a lot of houses. If we lost a lot of houses, a lot of disruption, utilities, think about when your houses go. Septic tanks go, everything in your basement, fuel. Cars, fuels, everything. You want to talk about damage to the river now? When those extreme conditions happen. So that's why I think they're hammering on you, because you didn't lose enough.
Well, we could wait till we do, I guess.
Thanks, Bill. Yes.
One little point of clarity, we heard from Bob, we've heard from others, issue of when the town stopped work, expressed as though that was a choice, when the town would stop the work that it did in the stream. Well, the town understood it had a certain amount of limited authority to do some work, and in fact was ordered not to do more, and finally ordered to stop all work altogether. So it is not within the town's authority to do more at this time. Correct, Bill?
Would you like to say something too?
Yeah, thank you.
Just to clarify a little bit about where we are now in terms of dealing with the state and federal governments. Just a little history. As soon as Irene was done, the first thing that the town did was to contact the state river management engineer for this area. They also used to be known as the stream alteration engineers. And made arrangements for him to come to the site, which he did on August 31st, I believe, or August 30th, just a couple days after the storm. Because we knew that we on our own can't just jump into the river and do things. So we went to the authority that we knew that we had to go to and had a good meeting with him and walked the length of the river and described what we thought we needed to do and got his authorization to do the work that we were planning to do. And that was all couched in assurance that the Army Corps of Engineers, which is the federal agency that has jurisdiction over all these rivers, would be issuing a general permit to the state of Vermont for this work. And basically the work that we were doing would be covered under that permit. So we started and began work in the area that we were working on, and we're proceeding, and as you all know, it sort of got into a lot of controversy over whether it was being done properly or whether we were exceeding our authorization, et cetera, et cetera. And the net result of that was we received a letter at the end of September from the Corps of Engineers, essentially citing the town for violating the Code of Federal Regulations for the work that we had done, and saying that very directly that if there was any further entry into the river, that it would be a willful violation, and therefore it's a criminal violation, and we decided for that. So we obviously had to respond to that letter, which we've done, and we're in the position right now of waiting for a response back from the Corps of Engineers, and our response basically was that we feel that we were authorized under the general permit And the response that we've had from the local, not the local, but the state representative, the Corps of Engineers, who we had down here just a couple of days ago looking at the river with us, was that regardless of whether they issued a general permit or not, it's the town's obligation to get an individual permit for whatever work we were doing. So we're caught betwixt and between right now the state's Agency of Natural Resources, which is basically at this point appears to be taking hands-off position on river work, and they've ceded it back to the Corps of Engineers and said, well, we'll let them do any enforcement. So we're in sort of a limbo, and we don't mean to be saying we don't want to do any more work in the river, but at this point we can't legally do anything in the river. At the same time, what we've assured the Corps of Engineers that we would do is that any future work obviously we apply for our own permit, which is required to do. But at the same time, we need to come up with a more comprehensive long-range plan that will hopefully help us through these kinds of situations in the future, so there won't be all this wrangling about what you're authorized to do and what you're not authorized to do. The response so far to that is that to come up with I like to call it a kind of a pre-permitting process where we kind of have a permit ahead of time in place, is that every incident and event needs to be treated as an individual event and has to be looked at individually. Well, if you get a storm the size of Irene, or even a smaller storm that's causing damage, there's not enough staff to go around to do all this permitting stuff in order to get you into the river and do the work that needs to be done. So it's a real catch-22 that the town is in. We're in. I'm hearing all your stories, and trying to hear them very sympathetically. I know the Selectboard is too, and we're trying to figure out a way to deal with the Corps of Engineers in a productive manner and not a confrontational manner, because it's not going to do us any of us any good to get the agency that regulates angry with us. We need to work with them, and hopefully this meeting is a start. And the idea was that we get kind of all your concerns, or as many concerns as possible, out of this meeting in a public way, without having a real argument here. But let's figure out a way to go forward with planning for the river. And there are extremes. There are extremes that would say, let the river do what it wants to do, wherever it wants to go. It doesn't matter who's living in the way. And then there's the other extreme that says, let's dig it out and just make it go faster and get it by here. And we obviously, can't go to either of those extremes. We have to find a happy medium here. And that's what the town is going to be trying to do with all the various interests and the regulators that are working on this. So bear with us, and unfortunately it's not as simple and as logical as you and we would like to think it is. When you go out there and look at what's in the river, I have my ideas of what we should do, and everybody in this room has probably a little bit different variation of what we should do, but it's not as simple as just going out there and saying, well, we have to go from point A to B with a bulldozer and pile this up and take these things out. It has to be a methodical process, so it's acceptable to those who are in charge of regulating it, as well as to those who need to be protected. And that's a huge challenge to satisfy everybody. So that's what we're going to be working on. And I hope you'll all be real participants in this.
I have a question, Bill.
Wait, I would like to, after this, get back to more testimony, because we didn't open it up for everybody else. So ask your question, Dayton, and then I want to redirect back to more testimony. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you know of any other town in the state that has been cited by the Corps of Engineers? And I asked that question because I drove to Norwich, Vermont and back. A week ago, I saw 3 excavators in 3 different rivers. And this was long after whatever happened, and all of a sudden, we're in hot water. Do you know of any other town that's been cited?
We asked that question 2 days ago as to if other towns had been cited, and I believe the response was, we're doing our work on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know.
I'll take one more question and then we'll redirect.
Just to add to that, I have a friend on Newton Thompson Road down in Forceful, where they had all the issues. You probably heard about that. He's one of the people who, he's got water running right through his basement. He spent like $30,000 to fix everything. They're letting them take bulldozers in to clear out everything, try to divert the water away from the 3 houses on the end of that road. So if they're talking about we can't put machinery, they're allowing us in Forceville, but not here, which is just an animal.
Yeah.
They have, and I'm sure they're doing some things on a case-by-case basis. But I know that they have prohibited some work in some areas. I live near the New Haven River, and they shut stuff down up there. But whether they've actually put the town in the same position that we have been put in, I'm not sure.
I remember your last name is Hobbs. What's your first name again? Albert. Albert, there we go. Sorry. All right. You good? Okay. I'd like to open it up because I don't know if there's anybody else here that's not a resident that wanted to speak, and if residents want to continue speaking, they can too. But I just wanted to make sure that other people got their chance to have a say. Just shy, or we need more time? You want more time, Charlie? Go ahead.
One other little topic.
Come on up. It's okay. Do you want the map back again?
No, I can hold this up for all I need.
Okay.
I just wanted to provide a confession for all you guys and let you know that I'm actually from Southern California. And you won't judge me negatively because of that. But I just want to use that to give a little bit of context about something I'm about to say, in that I really fallen in love with this town. I care a lot about everyone here and about the houses, and I would never choose a fish over a person. I think that's a preposterous thing. But without even, I think that's kind of a false dichotomy. I grew up next to a concrete ditch about 30 feet deep and 30 feet wide, and there's no river left at all. And I can show you the 500-year flood map from where I grew up, and it makes this look like paradise. I mean, I'm talking even the 100-year flood map for around LA, hundreds of thousands of people underwater, and I just want to throw out that channelizing or narrowing or altering a river might seem like a good idea in the short term, and maybe sometimes it's even necessary, but it's not a long-term solution. And what happened there was people upstream, more pavement, more roads, everything. There's just nowhere for the water to go, and you try to make it move fast, but the fact is when there's too much water, it's just not going to work. And I mean, maybe this is like a devil's advocate position, but if we turned this river into that concrete ditch where I grew up, I guarantee we'd still have to worry about floods, and we'd lose a lot for it. So, just wanted to offer any more.
Thanks, Charlie.
I'm Heidi Willis. I live in Salisbury currently, but I spent 10 years in East Middlebury, so East Middlebury is near and dear to my heart. And I've also spent 20 years doing work with water quality monitoring with the Addison County River Watch Collective. So there are just a couple things. I thought a lot about East Middlebury when I sat over there in Salisbury, safe, high and dry, though I've had a lake in my backyard since, well, for most of the year. We're just getting more water. Someone mentioned, I think Charlie mentioned about working with Ripton, and I was thinking, I I would strongly suggest before you do a whole lot more work in the river, it may seem obvious, oh, we just need to make it deeper or wider, but I hope you're going to be dealing with the folks that have studied fluviogeomorphology, so that what we do doesn't exacerbate what is done, doesn't exacerbate the next event, so that we think we're doing something. It looks to the way things have operated in the past, this is what we've always done in the past, but there's new knowledge about how rivers operate and what they want to do. So I hope, obviously, that you take advantage of that. The idea of working upstream, I would also suggest downstream. We've sampled regularly downstream, and there's a huge sandbar that is built up at the mouth of the Middlebury River, where it comes into the Otter Creek, that is built up in the last 10 to 15 years since the berming went in. So I would urge you to look at the whole river. This section is where everybody lives, and it's where we really care about, but there's stuff going on all up and down the river, so I hope you would take that into account. There's a lot of erosion that's happening down the farm fields in there, and I think that's because of the speed of the river. Here at the Route 7 bridge, if anybody, you used to be able to go knee deep in that river. If we had to get a water sample, there was plenty of water there. And that was low flow times in the summertime. Now during low flow times, it's ankle deep. So there's been a lot of deposit of sedimentation. So, and the other thing I guess I'd say is maybe we should thank Irene for being able to have this kind of discussion now about our rivers. I've been really proud of the way the discussion is happening around the state, and I know that you guys have really taken a beating, but I think you've done it very gallantly, and you've kind of led the way in terms of taking on this subject. I think we all have a whole different new appreciation of our rivers and what may be happening in the future. So anyway, thank you for letting me speak.
Anybody else?
Just one quick question.
State your name again.
Erica Murray. When you all came out to the berm and did your inspection of the river, and I don't know who the gentleman was from the Army Corps of Engineers, but did he happen to, I know he did certain spots, but was he able to go up the whole distance down the river in those, when you came to inspect?
They were asking about
the gentleman from the Corps of Engineers when 2 days ago when you went to certain spots, was that gentleman or woman, as the case may be, were they able to inspect the whole river, the distance of the river that we're all speaking of, or was it just certain spots that he might have looked at?
I really don't know exactly how far she went.
Okay.
And what her routine was.
Right. Well, I'm because the Corps are the ones that put that dike in, and it was 17 years ago. I mean, we've got to have records, we've got to have information, and I think that, you know, if we just pointed out that, you know, you guys, you worked on this, there's got to be, I mean, I'm not the only one that sees changes in that river. And I'm sure that they have that information. And maybe we just need to say, you know, gently remind them that, you know, you have this on file. You have this in your records. Could you please take a look? You know, the residents here of East Middlebury are not crazy. Something, you know, needs to be, I don't have the solution. And I respect the fact that that we really, you know, we do need to be careful of the habitat, and we do need to be, but, you know, something needs to be done. I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, like maybe just gently have them look back, because they are the ones that put that in there, and there've got to be records.
I think we'd be asking for their input of what was done before, and certainly Fred has a lot of information, I think, of what was done before as well.
Yeah, I'm Fred Dyington, and I was involved in the berm and the clean out, the work that was done in 1989. And this light green is an attempt to show approximately where it is, but there was a big mass failure of embankment here, and a lot of debris ended up in this area. And Bob Collins, late Bob Collins of the Soil Conservation Service, together with Betty Wheeler and Bill Hageman, our former Director of Public Works, with funding from FEMA as a hazard mitigation grant, and with the Soil Conservation Service and the Corps of Engineers, did some channel management of this. And there were two areas where the material that was cleaned out were placed. One is a large berm around the log yard, and the other, it contributed to this linear berm, or dike, as some people call it. And I have to say, this was not really engineered as a flood protection device, like other berms and levees elsewhere are. This was, it provides only a measure of protection. It did have some design to make it more resilient than if it were just the same kind of soil. So there's, you know, some other material in it, and Eric Murray can review it and work on it. The river has changed course, and even this aerial photograph is much different, as you've heard people say. And these meanders are migrate downstream, they cut wider, and then they cut off. And one of the things that you will notice from this is the constriction of the area that the river has left in which to do its thing by virtue of that. And, you know, I'm not sure today whether the proper flood hazard mitigation would be to do that. Because the current thinking is that you need, rivers are going to find the room they need or have access to a floodplain. When I came to town in '81, the original map for the floodplain then covered all of this area, and it was of such concern that it was rejected by the Selectboard. And this is a more recent flood hazard map, and even so, it's in 1985, it's way out of date. Rivers migrated out from it, and there was a bit more recent effort, thanks to Amy Sheldon and work that the agency had done to better define these inadequate maps. And we've started work on that. Even that, I think, may need review from the recent experience where, you know, the flood went outside of that. And I don't want to get distracted and talk about that tonight, but the town, in addition to this, there was some work done in these bends, which the river has disrupted some, and you can see the white rock. So there's still a conversation about whether the town has some obligation or could revive this, or what should be done with more advanced thinking.
So anyone else would like to speak? If not, I thought we'd see if the select board had any questions for anyone. Does the audience have any questions for the select board?
Well, I have a question. Under circumstances such as I...
We can't hear you, so just talk loud.
Under circumstances such as Irene, does the state recognize the town leadership as having to make an executive decision for the moment, because the Weather Service was showing 2 more hurricanes taking the same track? So, I mean, don't they give leeway in emergency situations to the state and their engineers for the town to make an executive decision?
So the question is, does the town...
That seems to be the essence of the debate at this point.
Sorry, I totally missed.
The question was, just for the record, does the town have the right to make an executive decision?
Without being penalized.
An emergency.
I'm really concerned about Middlebury, East Middlebury, and Middlebury being penalized monetarily or otherwise. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think anyone's at fault here.
It's a really good question.
I think it can answer, help you here in the sense that obviously the board and the administration are never looking to create a fight or get in trouble with the state or federal government. At the same time, there's certainly no one on this board or in this administration that's going to shrink from their duty to step up and do the work that has to be done if an emergency occurs. As Nick Artem says so well, a disaster is an emergency that was not properly responded to. We don't want to allow that to happen, and we're not going to sit on our hands because we can't figure out a permitting course if we need to take a limited action to try to protect some people. So you can count on us to do that. But you can also count on us to try not to create more problems for ourselves or for the town either going forward than we absolutely have to in doing so.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Albert.
Out in the river, there is a lot of trees now. Okay, are we gonna do anything to get the trees out of there before spring?
I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen next,
By spring, that's gonna be.
but it's certainly on the list. Yes.
It has been made clear to us that we do not have the authority at this time to do that on our own accord. And so we're trying, and Bill is being very patient. It's amazing how patient he can be working with some of this, far more so than I, to work with these authorities, to try to point out the work that is needed, the threats that remain, and to try to find the course of action and permitting to allow this to be handled. But right now, we're not seeing movement on that.
Just one more weakness that just came to my thoughts. On the fire district property up by the gorge, when we had the flood and previous floods, there's been a tendency for the water to get up over the ledge and go through the foundation area where the old building was. And there's very little, if it ever gets past that next little berm, to stop it from getting out onto 116 and 125. And so that's something that probably needs to be looked at. This is fire district property. It's kind of dangerous there.
Well, I think that's something probably that the Prudential Committee could take a look at and talk to the town about. Hicks?
We need to talk about it.
Yeah. It would be something, I don't think they're aware too much of what's going on there. So I think probably the Prudential Committee would be interested in hearing what you have to say at some point. Bob?
When the Army Corps came through and Bill, I'm not sure if it was you or Dan walked through it, did they, after the talking to and the walkthrough, did they have any recommendations? Did they say, well, now we think we should do this, or now we should do this, or was it basically just a nature walk?
Oh, you know what, we probably, should we have a microphone? Would that be, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you come over here and ask your question? I'm sorry. Just because we can't hear the question and then we hear the answer, or we don't hear either one of them. Go ahead.
My question was, when the Army Corps went through with you for a little bit, Bill, or with Dan, when they got done with the walk, was it any recommendations that they had? Was that, oh, well, now we need to get something done, or the Army Corps was going to come in and do something, or what was their big plan? Or the end comment was, or was it a nature walk for them? Just for the record.
The short answer is no. I don't mean to be flippant about that, but we asked that question, you know, what do we do now and how do we go forward? And hate to even say this here, but essentially the answer was, we need to wait until spring to see what happens.
Well, they never did a walkthrough with you at all, did they, Bill?
I'm sorry?
The Army Corps never did a walkthrough with you at all, did they? They only sent you a notice of
Just
violation.
the other day, on our spot walk.
So some long time after they sent you a notice of violation, which was some long time after the flood event and so forth, then finally they come down to look at the river.
So
I think the timeline's important.
That's the true short answer, and there was really no answer to our question. And I'm not sure whether we can get a better answer. We're going to have to work on that to see if we can. As you know, winter's coming on, it's not going to be any easier day by day goes by to get in there and do anything. But if there is some opportunity, we'll certainly be taking it.
Mary, can you come up to the... to the right hands, and so I think that
I think we need to do that then.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
My comment is essentially, Mary Meekum, my comment is essentially the same as Mary Kay's. If there is any, if the select board or Bill, if anybody has any suggestions as to how to channel residential pressure, East Middlebury can do that.
We're pretty good at that.
Yeah. You know, but if there's a constructive way for our voice to be heard, if someone would advise us as to how to do that, we would do that.
Dean?
I should say we do have. I do have copies of the letters, the letter that we got from the Corps of Engineers and the letter that we responded with, and be happy to give them to anybody who wants to read them through, and that might stimulate your thinking a little bit and give you some ideas. I don't think that, doing a petition is certainly, there's no harm in doing it. And it could be influential. In individual letters to the Corps of Engineers or your congressional delegation or anybody certainly can do no harm. So I think any of those kind of pressure points that you can use might be helpful.
There's Dean first and then John.
Thank you. Thank you. Dan, I know you were going to speak a minute ago, and I had a quick question for you because when we last spoke about this, one of the concerns was the Agency of Natural Resources had been working fairly closely with the town right after the storm, and then we were sort of halted in our effort to do anything more, and it was kind of left up in the air at that point. And it sounds like now the Agency of Natural Resources is backing away from what should be their responsibility and turning it over to the Corps of Engineers. Is that a correct understanding of where things are right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there seems to be a interagency, but also a state and federal discomfort dispute as far as who's going to take the lead on solving this river issue. FEMA is basically an assistant agency. They don't come in and tell us what we're going to do. They tell us, they help us figure out how we're going to fund what we want to do. In other words, what works under their realm. Army Corps, I think Bill said it very well, is they're saying, we want to see what's going to happen with all this snow melt and all the spring rains, and we don't want to see anything happen, not just in East Middlebury, but everywhere. So it appears that statements by the governor saying, we're going to get the streams, we're going to clean them out. Some people don't like that idea. He's here to try to help the people. The feds, I think, are being left as the enforcement agency, so it appears that the state is helping the people. and nobody knows who's on first. And when John and Bill said earlier that we got caught in the middle of it, yeah, we did get caught in the middle of it, because we're trying to find out who's our master in this whole process. You know, the FEMA meeting I went to, they said, Army, or the V-Trans hosted it and said that A&R, stream alteration, the people you talked to, no mention of Army Corps at all. The memos we got, the communication about in-stream work was talk to your stream alteration or stream alteration engineer. They're the men. Those are the guys you need to talk to. We did that. Chris has been here at least 4 times and many phone calls. We thought we were dealing with the right agency. And now Army Corps is involved, not only in East Middlebury, but pretty much everywhere. The reality is, folks, they don't have the staff either to do what they think that they need to do by their authority. And as this thing grows and became bigger than East Middlebury, became bigger than Addison County, bigger than the state of Vermont, big as the federal government, the more people you get involved, the hairier it gets. And now we're at that point. We've gone from the emergency response of police and fire to now a federal agency, and the whole thing slows down. So that's why you get the responses. Wait till spring, see what happens. Very clear.
Dan, was there any part of that discussion that included tree removal? I know we talked a lot about some of the dredging and rebuilding the berm and the riprap along the bridges and so forth, but what about tree removal? We really didn't get into that much.
A few weeks ago, we had some other river people here. Was when the FEMA guy was around, and they said, well, you know, you probably should get rid of that one, you probably should get rid of that bunch over there. And then a few weeks later, it says, they're like, don't do anything. Just wait till it happens. Wait till it happens in the springtime. So it changes. It changes as time goes on.
It's John and then Victor.
Okay. Just wanted to respond to the concept of putting forward a petition. Obviously, when you as a group come forward to the select board as the closest governmental authority, a petition means a great deal to us. And the farther you get removed from that authority, the less weight it probably has. So while I think it's very appropriate for you to make your feelings known as a forceful group to the Army Corps of Engineers, it's probably going to mean more for you to direct that effort towards the state. I would think, because what we need to do is resolve how the plan of action is going to be developed going forward. How are we going to find a solution that together we can agree upon that is a balance of these various needs and concerns? And the faster that can be achieved, the faster all of the communities can have a response plan that is workable. But we certainly need to push, and we need your help to push to get that accomplished.
Okay, Victor and then Fred.
Well, I'd like to second that, but also to point out that certainly any government agency has a duty. You raised the question, do we have the authority? It's absolutely certain that we have the duty to protect the people of this community, and in an emergency to take whatever action is necessary to do that. Therefore, we ought to have the authority. I think what all of this demonstrates is that the agencies of the state and the federal government have not operated in a way to give us that authority when we needed it most. And I think that needs to be, that's all the more reason I think we have a grievance. And we ought to express that grievance. At the same time, I think, to assert that the duty doesn't go away. I mean, when there's an emergency, you meet the emergency. You protect life and property. And I don't think that that's something that we can back away from. And I have a certain pride in the actions taken by the town in doing that. A certain amount of anger by the statements about the town having done the wrong thing. I think we did the right thing, maybe not with all the full knowledge that we should have, but certainly the town did its best. And I think that, yes, we shouldn't simply wait around for it to happen again. And therefore we need to express a grievance that we can't wait until next spring, that this is something that needs to be addressed now, and state, and I, obviously there's a conflict of agencies and authorities. I think the governor has stated what should be the proper attitude toward this, and I think that the state agencies need to get in line with that, and we need to express our grievance, perhaps through our congressional delegation, to the federal agencies that are involved. And so we should do it with a concerted voice. Yeah.
Other than institutional knowledge for the town, I wasn't directly involved. This is Bill Finger and Dan Werner's role, but there's a role in my office, and that is to keep the town eligible for flood disaster assistance under the National Flood Insurance Program. We've been pretty fortunate as a community here. We've only had, before Irene, since 1985, only $4,000 in actual claims for damages, payments in the entire town of Middlebury. We've been very lucky compared to a lot of other communities. But being eligible for flood disaster assistance is pretty damn important. This is what paid for replacement of the Lower Plains Bridge. So we do need to follow the procedures, and that involves permitting any work that is at a local level. So adding to the mix of, state permitting, stream alteration, federal permits, there is supposed to be a local permitting. We received a letter about a year ago, basically stating that we need to do a better job of regulating fill, small amounts of fill, and any changes in that area. Now, this is a challenge. There's some things that zoning doesn't traditionally regulate. We certainly don't regulate the agency of transportation up in Ripton and what they do that contributes. We don't regulate ourselves, in terms of the town public works department. That's not really in the purview of zoning to do. And a lot of people do maintenance, regular maintenance on their properties, maintaining flood walls and so forth, and it's not traditionally a function of zoning to regulate that. This is something that will get some further attention, along with after what should we do next time as a result of the experience with Irene. I would just say that from my observation of this, if you had to pick the worst possible time to get input and on a management plan for what to do with the river, it would be immediately after a major disaster. And if you had to pick the worst way to regulate it, it would be verbal. I will just say that I'm sure there will be plenty of discussion in the legislature and in the agencies about how this can be done better. And I hope that it is something that enables other interests to be involved beforehand. It was terribly frustrating for the fishing community to have to react in the way they did. There's a lot of good talent and information out there, and your input, and it really can't be dealt with in a disaster response desperation situation. It has to be pre-permitted. It has to be a management plan for this, and it has to be sensibly implemented. The time to do it is well before, not the 3 weeks after a major event like this. And there's going to be a worse one. That's the really tough thing. And what I have to worry about is that FEMA has ever-increasing difficulty paying for these natural disasters. Flood insurance is going to cost more. It's going to cover less. So this is much more than just our river and permitting. This is how we deal with disasters, how we do a better job of managing this. And the other thing is, at the time of these events, there are many people in the state who could be mobilized to help communities at the site-specific time when there is an emergency. People who have training in fluvial geomorphology, which is the science of how rivers act. If the Agency of Transportation can pre-qualify engineers for projects, we can pre-qualify fluvial geomorphologists who can be deputized or assist. And during the time when there's only 4 people to cover the state of Vermont, it is nuts to have a follow-up and monitoring. So I think there'll be a lot of discussions about this in the legislature, and a lot more that the town needs to do to update its regulations to keep eligible for the National Flood Insurance Program.
Thanks, Fred. I saw Amy. Why don't you come on up, Amy? And then we'll. Do you want the map up, Amy? Okay. Just turn.
I'm Amy Sheldon. I live in East Middlebury, and I'm a river scientist who's done a fair amount of work on the Middlebury River. It's been really great for me to hear from all of my neighbors about how the river changed and has affected you after Irene. We do have a lot of watershed-wide data that's available to help us plan, and I really sincerely believe that East Middlebury is in a very unique position compared to other towns around the state in that we can come up with a design that can balance our residents, our historic village staying intact and having a healthy river. And what I hope is that this conversation leads us to, as a community, learning more about what's happening watershed-wide, what's happening in the specific reaches of the river where we live, and then designing, with the help of probably some hydrologic modeling, a long-term solution. One thing that gets complicated is when we try to design long-term solutions, there's a lot of variables involved. This is a really dynamic part of the watershed because the water comes bombing off the mountain and hits a relatively flat valley floor, and it's always going to be changing. It's always going to want to be meandering. But I think that if we do some proper analysis, specific engineering analysis about how much water we can anticipate, and the other variable is climate change. We're getting more frequent storms at greater intensities, but we can do what's humanly possible, I think, to design a system for our section of the river that would give us some relief over. I don't think anyone's going to guarantee it, but we're doing projects around the state. We're saying maybe we're getting a 20-year life expectancy out of them. It's more than what we've had out of our current situation, which we all know. We went in 2008 and did some work around the bridges, and now we're back again. So I think I really applaud the Selectboard for having this meeting, and all of you for coming out and speaking. And I really hope that this is just the start. And I would say that other towns around the state, we can't wait for the regulatory agencies to do this for us. They might have to permit a design. We can take the lead on hiring someone, getting this project underway, and working with the agencies as partners to help us balance the characteristics we're talking about. Yeah, we still want to live in East Middlebury, and we want to have a healthy river, and we can have both of those things. But we need to have it be based in science, and it does need to be methodical, because we do risk damaging infrastructure if we just go in without basing it in an understanding of what's happening watershed-wide and what we should expect the river needs for its room to meander. So,
thanks, Amy. It's like Paul, and did you want to say something else, man?
Good evening. My name is Paul Ralston, and along with Betty Nuovo, we represent you in the Vermont legislature. So our job is to try to listen, that's our primary role, and hear your concerns and then try to represent those concerns in Montpelier and in two various state agencies. I thought tonight's meeting was excellent. I thought the group was just really wonderful. There's lots of good ideas. We've all heard most of them. It's great to hear you personally say them. I heard something new tonight, and something very important that Betty and I are going to take up. I heard that the state of Vermont and the Agency of Natural Resources is backing away and letting the Federal Corps of Engineers be the primary referee or litigator of this issue. And I think that's unacceptable. I think the state of Vermont and the Agency of Natural Resources has a responsibility, and we need to ask them, and we will ask them, to step up and help us. I think the state had limited resources. We all know that now. And I think the people that were responding to the disaster, those 4 engineers, they did the best they could. And people relied on that information and acted in good faith. And now that there's some controversy, that's not the time for our state agency, the administration of our government, to back away. So I can assure you that we will be talking to them and bring up that issue. And again, thank you very much for a very heartfelt and informative meeting.
Thank you, Paul.
I just want to say a couple things. Thank you for saying that, and for what the last part of what Amy said too is really important. This really needs to be a generational solution. I know right now it's like the people who endured Katrina. There's that short term and weeks and months where something needs to be done. Everybody wants something to be done, but it really needs to be a generational solution, because we all will not be here forever, and whoever comes after us. This is why the state is recently, the A&R folks are saying, we really need to look at this long term. So if the box of sand gets full to this point or whatever, these things need to happen. It's already been kind of predetermined. This is what the response for East Middlebury is going to be, because we can't rely on the memories of Fred and me or who else or what we saw 10 years ago to be the response to the solution. It needs to be a longer term thing.
Anybody else? From what I hear, there's a lot of this community that wants to keep their sort of voice in this dialogue. That was mentioned before that there might be a committee put together to work on this long-term plan. I'm not sure if that's still part of the solution, but I would like to suggest that maybe as a community, East Middlebury would like to have some people represented on that committee if some sort of thing goes forward. I think to leave them tonight with some sort of sense of what would come next and how they can participate.
Well, I think it's clear that to some extent we as a board and administration have felt a little bit at a loss or lack of control due to the action of the Army Corps of Engineers and the withdrawal of support, if you will, from A&R that we had initially. At the same time, I think Amy Sheldon's point is very well made, that we do have resources here and we have a need to address that is a local need. So starting to put forward an effort to understand that need and an appropriate response while trying to work with these agencies would seem to me to be a reasonable course. And that the best way to do that, I'm not sure yet, but we can talk about that as a board and with the administration. And I think that we ought to take a proactive way forward, and I would expect the board would support that activity. So why don't we try to do that and see if we can do that and involve all of you as well as we can, and certainly at the very least keeping everybody well informed. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It was a great meeting. Oh, wait. There's one more thing.
Macadam already signed in. The sign-up sheet is in the back.
And there was one more thing.